back to the Curious Kid podcast. It's been a beautiful summer, and my family has been spending a lot of time outside.
I love riding on my bike, playing frisbee, and taking walks with my daddy.
There are so many things we love doing outside, but the area we live in is a heavily wooded area, meaning that there are lots of trees and plants all over. This week, we are learning about something to look out for while you are playing outside.
Mailbag!
Mailbag! We got this message from 6-year-old Isabella of Saratoga Springs, New York. She is curious about poison ivy and how soda is made and how many different sodas there are.
Thanks for the message, Isabella. We are getting curious about poison ivy for you.
Soda would also be interesting to learn about. I'm sure there are many, many different sodas out there, and I've sampled a bunch of them. Thank you for sending us an email. Olivia, what's the question of the week?
The question of the week is, can a poison ivy rash spread from one person to another?
So, poison ivy doesn't exist everywhere in the world, so it may be helpful to let everyone know exactly what it is.
It is a plant that can cause a rash and make you itch like crazy.
Poison ivy grows throughout most of the United States, with some exceptions like Alaska and Hawaii. It also grows on other continents, but it is less common outside of the United States. It also has a fun species name. It goes by the name Toxicodendron radicans. Try saying that one.
Toxicodendron radicans.
Nicely done. While hundreds of thousands of Americans have an allergic reaction to poison ivy every year, it can be hard to avoid poison ivy because it looks similar to many other plants.
I've heard the saying, leaves of 3, let it be.
That's a good rule of thumb, but the problem is that there are lots of harmless plants that also come with leaves of 3. To better help identify poison ivy, here are some other physical characteristics. Each leaf has a short stem at its base. The one in the middle usually has a longer stem than the other two. The leaves, or as they are really called leaflets, are usually twice as long as they are wide, with a typical length being between 2 and 5 inches. There is also another helpful rhyme to consider when trying to avoid poison ivy plants. Poison ivy is often accompanied by white berries. So remember, berries white, run in fright.
The leaves can be green or red, shiny or dull.
The leaflets are lost in the winter and new ones are grown in the spring. They usually start off red and shiny and turn green and dull after some time.
Then they turn red again before they fall in the fall.
Poison ivy is not really poisonous, but boy will you be bothered if you get a poison ivy rash. The name of the chemical in the plant that causes the rash and itching is called urushiol. That's a fun word to say. It's spelled Urushiol and is pronounced urushiol.
The word urushiol comes from the Japanese word urushi.
And urushi means lacquer, so that makes a lot of sense. Urushiol is the same chemical that causes an allergic rash and itching when people touch other plants called poison oak and poison sumac.
What is a poison ivy rash like?
It usually looks like red lines on the skin and can cause blisters in many cases too. You can get the rash and itching by coming in contact with the leaves, and even if you come in contact with the roots or stems of the plant.
It only takes a tiny amount of urushiol to cause a reaction.
This number is going to blow your minds. The amount of urushiol needed to cause a reaction in most people is 1/1000th of a gram. If that's hard to picture, consider that the amount of urushiol needed to cover the head of a pin can cause a rash and itch in 500 people. And if that's hard to picture, consider this one. 1/4 of an ounce of nasty urushiol is enough to cause a rash on every person on Earth. Wowzers.
Some people are not allergic to poison ivy.
Well, it's true that some people can touch the plant and not have a reaction. But many people might not get a rash the first, second, or third time touching the plant, but can suddenly react when they touch the plant in the future. It is estimated that 85% of people are allergic to poison ivy.
If you touch poison ivy, you won't get a rash right away.
It actually takes 2 or 3 days to start, and is the worst about a week after contact. It can last almost a month before it goes away completely.
Leave the rash alone and it will go away eventually.
In many cases, the rash and blisters are uncomfortable, but are otherwise harmless. Resist the temptation to pick the blisters, because it can cause an infection if they open up.
If you have more serious symptoms, call a doctor.
You definitely want to get medical assistance if you have a high fever, if the rash doesn't go away after a couple of weeks, if you have difficulty breathing or swelling of the lips, throat, or tongue, difficulty swallowing, or any other more serious complications.
How do you treat poison ivy?
If you know you came into contact with poison ivy, there are a few things you can do to limit your exposure to urushiol. Wash the affected area with soap and water. Remove your clothes and wash them right away too. You can use rubbing alcohol to clean the area too. There are also medications out there that could be taken to help with the itchiness.
The best thing to do is just avoid poison ivy.
It's hard to avoid though. If you touch something that has urushiol on it, even if it's not the plant itself, you can get a rash and start itching.
So if our dog Chloe rolls around to poison ivy and I pet her, I could get a rash.
That's right. Animals like Chloe won't develop a rash or get itchy from the urushiol on their skin, but they can rub some of it on you and give you a rash and itchiness. Even if you are working in the garden and touch one of the garden tools, after it touched poison ivy, boom, you can get a rash.
You could even get the rash if you touch a dead poison ivy plant.
Get this, urushiol will continue to be present on dead poison ivy plants for up to 5 years after it dies. The same goes for urushiol on other surfaces. It will stick around for up to 5 years. Alright, Olivia, if I have a poison ivy rash and you touch it, can you get poison ivy?
No, I can't. Poison ivy is not contagious.
The rash itself and any blisters don't actually contain any urushiol. So if someone comes into contact with the poison ivy rash on someone else, they have nothing to worry about.
Have fun playing outside, but beware of poison ivy.
That's a great piece of advice. Well, that's a wrap for this week's episode.
Thanks so much for listening to this week's podcast number 99 on poison ivy.
Great job, Olivia, and great job, Isabella, for the fantastic suggestion. Next week is episode 100. Olivia is going to pick an awesome topic for the big episode. Olivia, what's the next letter in the super secret code for our season 4 finale giveaway?
The letter is Z as in enormous.
That's E as in enormous. Collect all the letters and send us the secret code before our season finale for a chance to win some awesome stuff. Do you want another chance to win some stuff from Curious Kid Podcast? You got it. Let's reveal another city that's cuckoo for Curious Kid Podcast.
Thank you, Salt Lake City, Utah.
Thank you, Salt Lake City. I found a few nicknames for Salt Lake City, including City of the Saints, Smog Lake City, and Ski City, USA. If you listen to us from Salt Lake City, send an email over to CuriousKidPodcast@gmail.com with a picture to show your Salt Lake City pride for access to an upcoming episode before anyone else gets to hear it. One of you will even get something awesome mailed to you from the podcast. Next week is episode 100, and I'm trying to do something amazing for Olivia for our 100th episode, and I could use your help. Please leave us a voicemail at 856-425-2324 to let us know why you love the podcast. I'm going to play your messages in episode 100. Your voice could be in the next episode of Curious Kid Podcast. How cool is that? Please get your voicemail in by this Friday, August 28th, so I could squeeze your messages into the episode. Thanks so much to all of you that have already left messages. It means so much to us, and I know Olivia will be so thankful when she is surprised with all of your messages, because she has no idea we're doing this. Come back next week to find out what Olivia wants to get curious about, to hear a big announcement about the future of the podcast I think you will all enjoy, and to hear all your amazing voicemail messages for the podcast. As always, thank you so much for listening and getting curious with us.